Away from the terrors of World War II, away from the battlefields, away from the concentration camps, Adolf Hitler made his commands, secluded away, deep in the Bavarian Alps. Hitler, his family and closest allies hid away, issuing orders for armies across Europe while they relaxed, dined and enjoyed an otherworldly peace. There's something chilling about the horror of the Nazis being shrouded in mundane moments with a family, but here, captured on film and restored to incredible quality, these are Hitler's home movies. Destined to become Hitler's eventual wife, Eva Braun was born into a poor family in Munich in 1912. She had a Catholic education alongside her two sisters, Ilse and Gretel. Eva and her sister Gretel were very close, spending a lot of time together. The girls had a lot of hobbies, such as swimming and skiing. At age 17, she took a job working for Heinrich Hoffmann, the official photographer of the Nazi Party. Working alongside him in his shop, Eva discovered her passion for photography and film, teaching herself how to use a camera and process the film. It was working alongside Hoffmann that introduced her to Hitler. He regularly visited the shop and took interest in her despite being 23 years her senior. They went on several dates that were kept secret, avoiding being seen together in public. The seriousness of Hitler's feelings for Eva were questionable.
Hitler met Eva Braun in October 1929. She was working as an assistant for the photographer in his studio, the photographer Heinrich Hoffmann. So Hitler visited, and it's said that he devoured her with his eyes on this first meeting. And there's sort of very much that sense that she really adored him. Then he would take her out on outings, to the opera, to dinner, for a drive, that kind of thing. And she quickly became very infatuated with him.
Working for Hoffmann allowed her to travel with the Nazi Party, meaning she could get closer to Hitler and be seen around him in public, but never alone.
she's a very, very difficult character to put one's finger on. Why? Because she was very much kept in the background by Hitler, because Hitler was very keen not to lose favour with German women by by cutting himself off with his own wife or a girlfriend. What's remarkable about Hitler's appeal is that he was absolutely adored by so many women. I think this is extraordinary when you look at Hitler today. And he's not a physically particularly impressive specimen, and not, I suggest, a figure that many women would find particularly attractive. But a lot of women did find him attractive because he was powerful, but also because I think that he brought out a sense of needing to be mothered, and people felt that the Führer looks after us, but we can also look after him as well. And this is why he deliberately, and not until the very last few days of his life, why he never really wanted to be publicly associated with a woman, i.e. get married or have a girlfriend, because he sort of felt that he was married to all German women, and indeed the German people at large.
Eva was growing increasingly attached to Hitler. With no attention being shown towards her, this influenced her first suicide attempt. Predicted to be around the 10th or 11th of August 1932, she shot herself in the chest with her father's pistol. Thankfully, the wounds were not fatal. This was suggested to be an outcry for Hitler's attention. After this, he began to commit himself to her more, and they became supposed lovers by the end of that year. She often stayed overnight at his Munich apartment whilst he was in town. Eva was a very mysterious character, always being in the background of all affairs, and rarely seen in public. The normality of their relationship was unclear.
On the 30th of January 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany, but of a coalition government. So there were just 3 Nazi posts in that coalition government.
It's very tempting to think that when Hitler comes to power in early 1933, that his grip on power is absolutely total. In fact, he has a very uneven, shaky start. He's still quite worried about public opinion. So what he does is a mixture of passing various laws that give him more and more power, like the Enabling Act, that actually makes him immensely powerful. But also, he takes advantage of various events like the Reichstag fire, in which the German Parliament building burns down. Now, it's highly likely, but never proven, whether the Nazis actually burned it down themselves. But certainly, in a sense, it doesn't matter. What happens is that Hitler and the Nazis took advantage of the Reichstag burning down to show that there was a communist plot against what the Nazis described as still being a democratic government. And it enabled them to seize more power, by emergency decree.
Very quickly, he turned Germany into a one-party state. So first of all, he made sure to eliminate the influence and power of the German political left. So the Socialist Party and the Communist Party, for a start, were banned over a short amount of time as well. The Nazi Party was the only legal party too.
Eventually, in January 1933, he becomes Chancellor. Now, don't forget, Chancellor in Germany, and this still remains today, is not, at the time, the head of state. The head of state is the president. So it's the Chancellor, though, who has the real executive power. By and large, the opinion of Hitler within Nazi Germany from the years he was in power, from 1933 all the way through to 1945, it varied considerably. Now, of course, like a lot of political leaders coming into power, when he started, he was really very popular. Yes, there were certainly people who had misgivings about him, but certainly within the first few years in which he was in power, and it seemed like the economy was going well, the majority of people in Germany, I think it's fair to say, really liked Hitler, and they thought that actually he is transforming our nation. We were on our knees, and now just a few years later, we're almost on top of the world. So yes, by and large, to begin with, public opinion of Hitler was incredibly positive. But of course, this starts to change when things go wrong. At the beginning of the war, he's invading countries left, right and centre. Militarily, things are going brilliantly, so therefore everyone loves the leader. But what happens next is, of course, the Russian campaign goes badly, and of course, when the Allies invade northern France on D-Day, June 1944, and those forces punch their way into Germany, and the Russians are punching from the other way. Of course, people's opinion about Hitler, is by and large negative. The big problem for the public, of course, is they can't express that negativity because it's a dictatorship. But certainly, by the end of the war, January 45 through to the capitulation in May, public opinion of Hitler is at rock bottom.
Hitler's relationship with her was very much kept from public view and just known among the very, very private inner circle.
Hitler liked to hide Eva from the public, as he wanted the German people to see him as a focused leader who was committed only to his nation. He also had the favour of many German women and was worried his popularity may decrease if he was thought to be betrothed. According to a fragment of her diary and the account of biographers, her second suicide attempt occurred in May 1935. She took an overdose of sleeping pills when Hitler failed to make time for her in his life. This prompted Hitler to provide Eva and her sister Gretel with an apartment in Munich that year.
It's very unclear as to what sort of relationship that Hitler actually had with Eva Braun. How sexualized it was, again, is impossible to say. But the fact is, it clearly was not a normal kind of relationship. It wasn't boyfriend and girlfriend. I suppose today we might call it arm candy in some way, but it wasn't public arm candy, because Hitler would never go around in public with Eva Braun in the same way as politicians today will go around with their wife or their husband or boyfriend or girlfriend. So it's a sort of relationship that Hitler sort of thinks he should probably have to make him feel normal, but actually I don't think it's a relationship that Hitler really needs.
The Berghof, a retreat situated in the Obersalzberg Mountains above the town of Berchtesgaden. Hitler owned a small house here, and in 1934 he began renovations to extend the property and make it a fortress for his closest party members. Chosen for its isolated location, Hitler increasingly spent more and more time up in the mountains as it was secluded from all other aspects of his life. He could relax here and escape from his stressful role as the dictator of Germany. Spending most of his time at this hidden retreat only added to the Führer myth, but also left many questioning his dedication to Germany in later years. Why was he hiding from his nation? When would he make another public appearance? Hitler had control over who could gain access to the Berghof, meaning only his closest and most trusted party members would be invited to join him for dinners and meetings. A large wing was added to the house and several additional buildings were constructed. The entire area was fenced off and remaining houses on the mountains were purchased by the Nazi Party and eventually demolished. Hitler had a private, guarded road he would travel along to reach this extensive retreat. Inclusive members of the Nazi Party would gather here for events or to discuss business, spending time with Hitler himself. Hitler would not rise until 2 p.m. and often wouldn't sleep until after 4 a.m. He controlled the country from this mountain retreat, slowly appearing less and less in public.
In September 39, Hitler invades Poland, along with Stalin. Stalin also, Soviet Russia, also invades Poland at the same time. But what the world remembers is the fact that Hitler invaded Poland, and a couple of days later, the British declare war on Germany.
The German population, because of Hitler's popularity, and even though they had experienced the horrors of the First World War and the trench warfare of the First World War, and all of the shell shock and everything that went with it, because he was so popular, they might not have been delighted to go to war in September 1939, but they went along with it. Really, one of the high points of Hitler's popularity was, the image of the Nazis taking over Paris. All of these attacks were very sort of quick and easy victories for the Nazis, and they just fed Hitler's success and popularity. In August 1939, just before the Second World War broke out, an alliance was made between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. And this seems very strange because we've already said how Hitler hated anything to do with Bolshevism, communism, and indeed the USSR was his ultimate enemy. The idea of eradicating socialism and Bolshevism from the earth was one of Hitler's main priorities. So it seemed a bit anomalous that they would make a pact like that. But of course, he was just trying to pave the way and make the circumstance right for the war, and that the situation in Poland, so it would be easy as the attack on Poland was. But then we saw as well how Hitler's very happy to tear up a treaty when it doesn't suit him. So on the 22nd of June 1941, the Nazis invaded the USSR with Operation Barbarossa.
Stalin's had this pact with Hitler for years, and he's thinking Hitler's never going to invade. Oh dear. Hitler goes straight in, June 1941, and again the Blitzkrieg, Operation Barbarossa, as it was called in this instance, was tremendously successful, and initially the forces just went through Russia like a knife through butter, and they slaughtered, pillaged in their wake. This was an absolutely a dazzling piece of offensive warfare. Hitler is always mindful of public opinion. I think that it's always important to remember that Hitler, does always worry about what the German people think about him. He doesn't just sort of seize power in 1933 and then not care. He wants to be liked, he wants to be popular, he is a political leader after all, and all political leaders, democratic or fascist or otherwise, want to be liked. Now, the best way to make yourself liked is to project an image that the people can identify with or respect or admire. And what he does is he uses propaganda and photography and film to show him as this kind of almost sort of messianic figure.
The Nazi regime absolutely hated the Jews and wanted to get rid of them from the very beginning. So we see that with some of the earlier policies, but as we get into the wartime period, of course, the policies become more and more radicalized, more and more extreme. So this idea, essentially the Nazis created this idea of a Jewish question or a Jewish problem that needed a solution. And throughout the course of the Third Reich, they put into place a variety of different measures to try to deal with their so-called Jewish problem.
Hitler's plans for the Jews, and when he decided to slaughter them, still remain a topic of a lot of historical controversy, because there is no piece of paper that says, "Kill all Jews," signed A. Hitler. But I think that what is absolutely clear is that in conversation, he would have said to his, top leaders, we need to start killing these people. Hitler was smart enough to know this shouldn't be on a piece of paper. The initial idea is that the Jews are rounded up into ghettos, and from those ghettos they can then be sent to concentration camps where they can be worked to death. And you see these camps all over occupied Poland and all over Germany itself. Suddenly, around the time of Barbarossa, 1941, it starts to get actually eliminationist. And you have what's called Action Reinhard, in which you got the establishment of 4 actual death camps in what was occupied Poland.
After the attempted assassination on Hitler's life, he would rarely leave the Berghof again. Eva's interest in photography and film is beneficial today, giving us an inside look at the personal life of Adolf Hitler, behind the propaganda and hard exterior. Whilst Hitler was enjoying his quiet life in the mountains, his beloved empire was falling. Eva was described by her cousin as one of the most unhappy people she'd ever met. Living a sheltered life alone didn't fit with her personality. After her sister married one of the SS generals, she was able to spend more time with her and their friends. but could never get over her consistent separation from Hitler. She would spend time at the Berghof when Hitler was there. Public displays of affection were non-existent, even in the enclosed world of the Berghof, leaving her feeling neglected. Although their relationship is said to have lasted 16 years, Hitler was never publicly committed to Eva, keeping her at arm's length on the rare occasions she would accompany him somewhere. With the war closing in on Germany, the political strain on Hitler increases significantly. Rumors of more assassinations and attempts on his life mean Hitler stopped visiting the Berghof retreat after July 1944.
There were lots of plots to kill Hitler, and of course, today we wish at least just one of them had actually worked.
This was codenamed Operation Valkyrie. So on the 20th of July 1944, Count von Stauffenberg made a serious attempt on the Führer's life by bringing a bomb into the briefing room where Hitler was, placing it under his desk and hoping the intention of Operation Valkyrie was that it would kill Hitler.
They don't want to get rid of Hitler because he's evil. That may be part of it. They want to get rid of Hitler because they think he's fighting the war badly. And they just are fed up with him. And indeed, Hitler is fighting the war badly because he's a terrible, terrible strategist. Bomb goes off and the whole building basically is destroyed. There's no way anybody can survive. But miracle upon miracle, Hitler survives because this oak table is so heavy, so over-engineered, that actually it absorbs so much of the blast that Hitler gets away with, I think, a perforated eardrum, some torn trousers, and a bit of shock. He survives this absolutely huge blast, and people look at the building and think, how can anybody have survived that? He's incredibly lucky, and as a result, of course, the bomb plot fails, and all the people who are involved, the conspirators, are rounded up. Some of them are executed summarily, some of them are famously strung up and hanged with piano wire and filmed, and their executions are supposedly watched by Hitler repeatedly. This is a really, really devastating blow for any resistance in the Third Reich. It comes just a month and a bit after D-Day, and of course, as the Allied forces, both Russian, American, British, Canadian, French, punch their way into the heart of the Third Reich, the resistance never quite manages to take advantage of that. In 1940, the first half of 1945 is probably the darkest 6 months in Germany's history, because it's being invaded by the Russians, the Red Army, from the east, and you've got the other allies coming through from the west. And it's the Russians who reach Berlin first. And when they reach Berlin, it's a city in rubble, it's a city in flames, it's a city in chaos, it's a city in which squads of marauding loyal Nazis are going around hanging people who are not taking part in the resistance to the city. It's a city in which you then got some Nazis committing suicide. It is the most benighted, appalling place you can imagine. And you've got the Soviet army literally raping and pillaging this city. This is the ultimate expression of conquering a people by raping its women. And it's been going on for millennia, and the Russians do it in a big way. Hitler's last days in the Führer bunker under the Reich Chancellery in the centre of Berlin, are a kind of terrible end of a Shakespearean tragedy, as the thunder of Russian artillery all around them, and they're deep inside this sort of concrete underground fortress. Everybody's sort of kind of going mad, and especially Hitler, who then gets married to his long-term girlfriend, Eva Braun, in this sort of kind of bizarre ceremony. And then just a few days later, Hitler, on the 30th of April, 1945, decides to take his own life, and Eva Braun is going to do the same thing with him, or Eva Hitler, as of course she became. And so he goes into his little kind of living room with his new bride. Nice way to spend your honeymoon, and they poison and shoot themselves. It's thought that Hitler's done both. He takes a little glass ampoule, a little canister of cyanide, and also shoots himself. And Eva Braun commits suicide by poisoning herself. Their bodies are then removed by some loyal SS men, his adjutant, and they are taken out in what passes now for a garden in the Reich Chancellery, but of course it's just a kind of pockmarked hellhole of artillery shells. And there they are, their bodies are burnt in this great kind of almost like sort of Viking pyre, like a Viking longship going up. And basically very little of Hitler remains. There is a bit of jawbone in an archive in Moscow, the teeth of which absolutely match Hitler's dental records. So there's no doubt that Hitler died. A lot of people like to say that Hitler escaped after the war. It's total nonsense. Hitler 100% died in Berlin on the 30th of April 1945. And with it, so did Nazism, or at least it did for a while.
The Obersalzberg was bombed by hundreds of British RAF heavy bombers. At least 2 bombs struck the Berghof and did significant damage, by which point Hitler fled to his bunker. On his birthday in 1945, Hitler took Eva to the falling Reich Chancellery for his birthday celebrations, with what was left of his inner circle. The other Nazis saw this as an indication that the end was near, as he always kept her hidden away from public events, but on this day chose to allow her to attend. 30th of April 1945, Hitler comes to terms with the fact that Germany is losing the war and is beyond repair. He hadn't made a public appearance or speech in months. His victories are long gone, needing a mixture of drugs to keep him sane. On this day, he finally agrees to marry Eva Braun, just hours before their suicide. The pair tie the knot with what's left of Hitler's loyal advisors as witness. Hours later, Hitler and his new wife retreat to his private apartment within the bunker. He hands her a cyanide capsule, and he holds his pistol. The pair die by suicide, leaving Germany in ruins. Hitler would rather die than flee Germany and be seen as weak.
Once the Red Army came into German territory in 1945, then Hitler's position as this infallible ruler and leader really not only became to be called into question, but really came to its end, because the Soviet troops were very vengeful. They were retaliating for all the terrible brutalities and atrocities that the Nazis and the German army had put into place in Soviet territory. What it meant was that they were coming closer and closer on their journey westwards to Berlin, and eventually Hitler and a very small inner circle around him had to retreat to his bunker, his underground bunker.
This is a war brought about by Hitler, and this is a war that Hitler has fought for too long, and he's fighting it to the death. And he's fighting it to the death of the people who he supposedly loves, and he no longer loves them by the end of the war. And he says that basically the German people don't deserve him, the German people don't deserve Germany, and everybody should fight to the death because basically, you know, they don't deserve to be alive because they failed him. Classic narcissistic thinking. The world is for him, you know, and he's not there for the world.
Finally, after many years of being Hitler's long-term partner, Hitler married Eva Braun that night. It was to be a very short-lived marriage because 2 days later, they both committed suicide together.
Their bodies are burnt in this great kind of almost like it's a Viking pyre, like a Viking longship going up.
On the 7th of May 1945, Germany surrendered. And once that had happened, the atrocities of the Nazi regime came to popular attention.
Ultimately, when it was shown quite how evil Nazism was and the German people fully appreciated it, then yes, the opinion of Hitler was not quite so positive.
Hitler's home movies give us a terrifying glimpse into how a normal family can look while their twisted ideology destroys lives. For every frame captured by Eva Braun, hundreds of innocent lives were being lost. The true scale of the tragedy of World War II would not be revealed until the Allies discovered and liberated the concentration camps across Europe. it is a tragedy that will never be forgotten.